On Gathering of the Crows, we discuss subject matters that may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Everyone considers my story to be true crime, but this book is a work of memory, my memory, and therefore is a memoir, and not an outsider's investigation of my life or crime. The feelings and emotions invoked are accurate. While some of my childhood memories have faded, these particular events remain vivid. To fill many gaps, I've relied on other people's answers to my questions. The typical disclaimers apply. Some names and other details have been changed or omitted to protect the privacy of individuals. Any resemblance between a fictionalized name and a real person is strictly coincidental. Where there are passages containing dialogue, quotations are used when I'm reasonably sure that the speaker's words are close to verbatim or that the speaker's actual meaning is accurately reflected. The story I share here is true to my memory, and these memories have shaped my perceptions, many of which are also shared here. This is how it was for me, what I experienced or believe I experienced.
I mean, I used to always think that maybe she's a little overprotective. And so if I had to say one word about her, it would be overprotective.
But you knew you could walk.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever say to her, "Mother, I can walk. Why am I in this wheelchair?"
No, sir, I never asked that.
When she wasn't around, did you get up and walk secretly?
I did, yes, sir.
Did she ever catch you walking?
She did a couple times.
And what did she say or do?
She got so upset with me, she would punish me so bad. Like, she started hitting me with a coat hanger and telling me all kinds of mean things. She would tell me that she wished she had an abortion when she had the chance, that I ruined her life.
The warm light, my scars are less jarring than I found them to be in the past. Or maybe time is softening the marks on my body. But sometimes, it's what is not visible that hurts us most. For me, that's true. For all the trauma inflicted on my body since childhood, it's the scar that isn't there that always travels with me. The scar that otherwise would have been there if I hadn't asked Nick to kill my mother. People really want to know, what was the final straw? When was the moment when I decided it was her or me? Here you go, y'all, on page 3. 1 month before the murder, my mother tried to cut my throat. At least, that's how I saw it. The cause of concern, suddenly, was my voice. It's so high-pitched. It's so squeaky. My mother complained to my ear, nose, and throat specialist. I thought my voice was distinct, like my uncommon name. Or maybe it was a family trait to be proud of. We both knew women on my mother's side of the family with similar high-pitched voices. Besides, Nick said my childlike chirp was sexy. So, I didn't understand the issue, and I told my mother so. Never in front of the doctors, of course. I knew better than that. But on the way home, I went on and on, like, well, a squeaky wheel. There's nothing wrong with my voice, I said with a whimper, as she pushed me in my portable wheelchair to the parking lot where our car was parked, outside the hospital in downtown Kansas City.
Way that, people will hopefully want to go buy the book.
I think that, obviously we wanted, and we meaning me and my co-authors, wanted to convey a sense of urgency.
Okay.
Because a lot of people can't put themselves in the mindset of where I was at with the abuse and how desperate I felt. So having a statement like she was going to cut my throat, that statement stands out a lot. And so it transports the readers into my mind and emotion. And so that's why it was so important to kind of say that and then go into the details of what I meant by that.
Right.
This is actually kind of the first time I've been honest. Besides being honest, my attorneys, even that, I haven't been completely honest with them.
I want to talk about the night of the murder. Tell me in your own words what happened that night.
Well, really, my mother and I had got into an argument 2 days before. And it was about my feeding tube. I'm like, I no longer need this feeding tube. Can we please have it removed? And she said no. And I had an upcoming surgery. And I didn't want to have it, so I asked her, please, tell the doctor I don't need this surgery. I've had it 20 times before. Why do we have to have it again? This is going to the doctor. She would do all the talking. I'd always have a stuffed animal or a Barbie doll. She'd just tell me, just play with my Barbie doll. I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hour.
Welcome back to Gathering of the Crows. I'm Fancy and I'm here with Mac. In our first episode, we peeled back the layers of Gypsy Rose Blanchard's shifting narrative, exposing how her recollections do not always align with the facts. But today, we're stepping even further into the web of contradictions and cawing out the truth.
She highlights Dee Dee's love for Cajun cooking, the dialectal quirks, and even how the name Petrie, her mother's maiden name, translates to clown in French. It's a colorful cultural portrait, but we have to ask, is it an authentic retelling, or is it serving a greater purpose?
Gypsy presents the details as indisputable facts, yet they serve to humanize Dee Dee just enough before the villainization begins. It's a narrative tactic. Present someone as a larger than life character before tearing them down completely.
Right, this isn't just about Cajun pride, it's about crafting a myth, one that makes Dee Dee seem both charming and manipulative in equal measures.
She does. And this is the thing. Like this is what we've seen and this is one of the things we've talked about a lot over the last year especially
Mm,
is the villainization of Dee Dee, and Christy and Gypsy miss no opportunity to villainize Dee Dee further, to make her sound crazy, to try and just make her the biggest monster ever. And I honestly, nothing I've seen so far now that we've got all the facts and the truth makes me think that Dee Dee was anything like what they're trying to make her out to be.
no, and and I see Gypsy building up only to tear down.
Yeah.
I've seen her do that with quite a few people.
Yes. Yes.
So it's something that she does, and I don't
Mhm.
believe I don't believe that Dee Dee was completely perfect. No one
No.
is. But I don't think she was this evil villain that she tries to portray her to be. I just don't believe that.
I don't either. And, I mean, she does a great amount of villainizing her co defendant as well. But I mean, he doesn't need help with that. He villainizes himself by his words and
Yeah,
his actions
he
behind
has.
bars as well as, in the planning of this
Right.
murder. I mean, the new
Hmm.
evidence that's coming out from his case file paints him very, very much a much darker person, more aligned with what I was seeing when I was seeing these emails that we've talked about in the past between him and his prison girlfriends.
Right.
Um, and but I mean, she takes special care in villainizing Dee Dee, and Christy does too. Like Christy doesn't
Hmm.
say a whole lot about Nicholas. She doesn't take the shots at him that others do, but she misses not one time to take a shot at Dee Dee. And I believe that that's really he has this deep seated hatred
Hmm.
for Dee Dee, stemming way beyond anything to do with Gypsy, stemming back to before Gypsy was born, and it's now permeating the way that Gypsy talks about her mother even worse. I've seen her talk worse about her mother in this last year of being out and out with Christy, and the way Christy portrays Dee Dee, than how she has ever talked about her mother in the past. And it's very hatred. It's hate filled. It's visceral. It's mean. I just, I don't know. And I think it's the influence of Christy manipulating the story, because Gypsy has no clue if Christy's telling her the truth or not.
No, she's not gonna know. Right. Because there's no other side. Just like with Gypsy, there's no other side because the other person who has a side isn't with us anymore. So, uh, they can keep saying whatever the hell they want to say, and it's up for us to guess what's true and what.
Right. Like, say what you want to say. They can say
Yeah.
anything,
Yep.
let the words fall out, because they can just make up anything they want about her now.
Yep.
And because she's been so easily victim or villainized like this, so easily villainized, now they can just do whatever. They could come out with any freaking crazy ass story, and people would be like, okay,
Yeah. They bought the MP. They bought the Munchausen. Let's just keep going.
yeah, they bought that, so let's just keep going on it, and let's just keep making her into the most awful human on the face of this earth. And I'm sorry, I just don't see that. I just don't see it, and it's frustrating as heck.
When I think the biggest thing that Dee Dee was guilty of was being overprotective.
Yes, very, very.
And I feel like, and I've heard Gypsy say
Right.
that
And look, I
times.
think that there's a family dynamic between her and her mother that was not healthy. Don't get me wrong. I was in the same situation with a single mother who had some
Right.
mental health issues, and she was overbearing. She was bordering, my mother was abusive, physically,
Yeah. I've had
mentally, but
that.
not to the level of, like, just horrible, horrific stuff. It was honestly a normal amount of me wanting to insert my independence and my mother not wanting me to grow up, and trying to
Not wanting to
control
let
me.
go. Right.
But the fact of the matter is that this is all, I think that Gypsy has made this into something that it's not. I mean, I think she has delusionally created this narrative in her mind, and it's all she'll accept now. It's like, and in just everything,
Hmm.
just like here's an example, like talking about in her book where she's talking about her mother making her use the manual, uh the manual wheelchair in the end, instead of her powered wheelchair, because her powered wheelchair gave her too much independence. No, her powered wheelchair was not easy for Dee Dee to walk, so she was using
Couldn't hold
that
it.
wheelchair, the manual wheelchair, as a means to stable herself while walking and taking care of Gypsy. But in Gypsy's mind, no, that's another manipulation. Oh, she just didn't want me to have my own way to get around in the hospital, so I had to be under her thumb. No, your mother couldn't walk. She was sick.
Needed something to help her for sure.
Yeah, stabilizing her. I do it with the shopping cart. So does my
Hmm.
husband. Like, seriously, it's easier to lean on something like that and walk and keep your balance than whatever. But it's
It really is.
frustrating, and the villainization just doesn't end. And I think that's the problem with a lot of this. But let's get into the family stories. So Gypsy recalls how
Hmm.
Dee Dee met her father, Rod Blanchard, at a local bowling alley, but her retelling conveniently smooths over some major details. Now, I've actually been to the where the bowling alley was. Christy drove me over there. I don't think it's a bowling alley
Oh.
anymore. I think it's now a school or something, but she took me by there,
Hmm.
and she was telling me all the stories. And this one is one of the ones that I get very frustrated with Gypsy on. So, the retelling of this is just, man, she really takes it to a different level, as she always does.
You mean like the fact that Rod wasn't exactly the innocent young man that she portrays him as?
Yeah.
He had his own indiscretions, and yet Gypsy's version places the full blame on Dee Dee for luring him
Right.
in.
Like, she's making the thing of, my father was 17, my mother was 24. What would she want to do with a 17-year-old? Well, here's the thing. She didn't think he was 17. She thought he was 21. 21 and 24,
That's what I
both adults, both drinking age, both, mature levels of whatever. She thought she was getting.
You're in a bar
Yeah, and
drinking.
Rod was drinking at the bowling alley, buying,
Hmm.
beer with a fake ID. So who's the real deceptive person here? It's not Dee Dee. Yeah, did she lie and tell him she was 21? Yeah, because he said he was 21. So maybe she thought, okay, well, I'll just tell him that, whatever. I don't know. And furthermore, that's only Rod's accounting. We have no idea whether she told him that she was 24, 21, or 300.
Yep. Again, the other person who has the other
Is
story
not
is
here.
not with us.
So, you know, and
So
that story bothers me beyond belief because it's what has been used to paint Dee Dee as a sexual predator, as a
mm,
and that begins the fodder for she made me take baths with her and we had to sleep in the same bed and it was a weird relationship and it was more like a couple than we were,
made her
it's
shave
laying this
everything. Like it's just,
foundation and basically again absolving Rod of any culpability or responsibility. So
yep.
now let's talk about these so-called pageants, past and purity, claims. Gypsy insists her mother was a virgin before meeting Rod, and there's I don't know. She says that she says her mother says she was a virgin before meeting Rod, but then she goes on to say contradictorily that oh well she was a groupie for bands so she couldn't have possibly been a virgin. Like how is that? That's not an A plus B situation equals C. That's some weird
No,
ass, oh, well, I believe that because she's a groupie that she had to have been having sex with people, so therefore she just couldn't have possibly been a liar, and
but here's my thing. Above all of it, why is it our business whether she was a virgin
right.
or not?
Why is it our business?
Why is Dee Dee's sex life
Right. Why
any
is it
of our
why does
business?
she need to tell us 5, 6, 7, 8 times that her parents only slept together 3 times, that her mother wasn't having sex with her dad? Why do you need to include that in your story? It's not part of
Don't
your
need to know
story.
that. And I know damn well baby Aurora is not going to want to know that when she
No,
gets older.
absolutely
She is not.
not. Not. And she's also not going to want to hear about barbecue sauce on her mom's boobs. But I mean,
No.
hey, this is a dedication to
No.
her, right? But these statements aren't just embellishments, they serve a psychological purpose.
Mhm. Right. I think Gypsy hammers this point home to create a contrast. That Dee Dee, lied about everything, even when she didn't have to. It's a tactic that makes the audience distrust Dee Dee completely.
But here's where the mirror flips because who else has a habit of rewriting history to suit their needs?
Hmm.
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 Hmm. That's also one of the things that I see in this. I'll be honest, we've been on this case for a long time, and I've never seen anything quite like this case. The chaos, the absolute just fighting and anger between content creators that is bred in all of this, and over the years, the lies, the media lies, like all of this is constructed to, you know, paint Gypsy as this victim, this ultimate
Yeah.
victim, and
Yes.
make Dee Dee just the worst human to walk the face of the earth. And none of that is true. Like, yes, do I believe that Gypsy suffered some amount of abuse? Yes. Most children at some point in time suffer
Yes, you
some amount
do.
of
Yeah.
trauma and abuse from their parents because you know, no parents are perfect. There is always going to be something. And I see this dynamic of the singularity daughter and the singularity mother, one against the world, two them against the world kind of thing. And I think that
Hmm.
that causes this rift in a relationship with them. Like my mother was very overbearing in that way, and all I wanted to do was escape.
Mm.
Like I just wanted to live
Hmm.
my own life. And I think that Deep Gypsy really had that kind of thought process. But what she's doing now, she knows that she is doing that she is not telling the truth. She knows those things, but I think she has honestly convinced herself of this alternate reality.
What you tell yourself is what will be,
What will be. Yeah, exactly.
what she's
Exactly.
doing.
Exactly. So, I just feel like she just rewrites it to suit whatever she wants, It's whatever she's feeling that day, and then she gets mad if anybody questions why the story's changed. Like, how
I know.
dare
Yeah.
you question a victim? Well, I'm sorry. When you've told 18 different versions of the same damn story, sweetheart, yeah, it becomes a situation of the boy who cried wolf.
And it seems not to matter to her, like how many different stories she's told. It doesn't matter.
No, not
She
at all.
does it without.
I mean, she's already wanting to redo this book because, she didn't proofread it properly, whatever, you know.
But you read through the whole thing when you did.
When you did the book,
Okay.
when you did the audiobook. Gypsy's childhood isn't just a series of memories, it's a carefully crafted narrative. One moment she glorifies her mother's achievements, like being ROTC queen or participating in pageants, and then next she shifts into full victim mode.
It's a deliberate contrast. The same woman who was charming and accomplished is suddenly a monstrous villain. This drastic shift serves one purpose. It's to reinforce the idea that Gypsy was trapped in a life of deception and abuse.
And what's more, these stories evolve. If you compare Gypsy's early interviews to her current book, events are retold with new layers of detail, ones that conveniently make her seem more helpless and Dee Dee more dangerous. And
Hmm.
talking about like the ROTC thing here, and how she tries to make it seem like her mother was always again lying about what she did in her life. She's minimizing this ROTC pageant thing by saying it's the only one she ever participated in.
Hmm.
And she had to go to uh the other beauty pageants as a obligation of being an ROTC queen. No, that's not even a thing. Like, that's not even a thing. So, and she did have trophies from other pageants and other things that I have seen. And you know what? She even entered
Hmm.
Gypsy into pageants when she was a little girl. So,
Yeah,
she's making it seem like her mother is just exaggerating every part of her life. But again, who's to say that Dee Dee told her any of this shit?
exactly. We don't know, and we never
And we
will.
never will. Because
We never will.
all the lies are lies that there's no verification of. And
Nope.
every time that there's a lie that there is verification of, they act like we're crazy when we find the verification.
Like when she retells the BB gun
Yes.
incident, and now she's adding that she didn't know, or that she did know, excuse me. Now she's saying that she did
It was a
know
BB gun.
it was a
Right.
BB gun,
But in
and that she also backed that up with holding a knife to Dee Dee's throat.
Right, like, it just constantly changes, like,
Like, when did all that happen?
and the narrative of when it happened has now changed. It's not in the storyline in the same place. It's in a different situation and a different reasoning, and it's not backing, right up against the whole Dan incident now. Now it's moved.
Mm-mm.
Like, she just
Mm-hmm.
continuously keeps on adjusting and moving the narrative. And I'm sorry, these aren't things that, oh, well, I thought this, and then when I recalled more, no. This is a complete retelling of stories in different
Yeah.
ways
Kim-
and changing timelines and who is involved in these stories. It's often winding two different stories together, or she's stringing along a pop culture reference that doesn't make sense inside of it, because I honestly believe a lot of her stories are taken from other people, and that's why they don't
mm,
add up, because she doesn't have the real world knowledge of what happened in that kind of situation.
no, no.
So you get this fairy tale version of it.
I said, or she does know, and she just doesn't want anyone else to know.
Right. It's just
You know,
the story's evolving. It's a problem for me. I'm sorry.
because when something is true,
Yeah.
uh, it's pretty much the same story every time you tell
It
it.
is. And I mean, granted, with trauma, childhood trauma and events like that she
Of course,
describes can cause
of
some
course.
layer of
Sometimes,
that,
yeah.
like, but that the way that this is unfolding is not that. This is not her,
But I'm telling you
you know.
right now, If I was at a point in my life
Mhm.
to where I had to pull what I thought was a real gun or even a BB
Right.
gun, either
Mhm.
way, I'm not gonna shoot my freaking mom with anything. Um, but I would remember exactly how that happened and what happened.
Absolutely.
That would not change in my
That would not
mind.
change over time. That would be the story is the
Mm-mm.
story, it's the story, and it was the story that happened then, and it's the same story today. Not, "Oh, well, I said it happened in 2009, but it really happened in
Mm-hmm.
2011." You know, "Oh, it was when I was with Dan. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't when I was with Dan. Oh, I knew it was a gun. No, I didn't know it was a gun. Oh, I had a knife. No, I didn't have a knife. Oh, I treated my mother. No, I did." Like, that's not how a story like
Right.
that evolves. That, no, no, no. I'm just no, no.
Yeah, no. And that's where everybody has the problem with believing her
How
because
can we?
you can't keep changing your story because when somebody's telling the truth, they're going to tell you the same thing. They're not going to keep
You
changing
know,
it.
if a story about the sexual assault changed over time to be, "Oh, I didn't remember this part or that part," I could get behind that and understanding that, but the basis of the story would not change. The core of the story wouldn't
No,
change, you know?
I would definitely know whether this was a BB gun or a real
Right.
gun.
And I would stick with
That
that.
would not, never would that
I just
change.
don't understand. It even defies the principles of lying at this point. Like,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. But the one thing that is clear is Gypsy's past isn't just a story, it's a product. It's been rewritten, sold, and repackaged every few years to fit new audiences.
A perfect example, her medical history. In one version, Dee Dee orchestrated unnecessary surgeries. In another, doctors were complicit in the fraud. But her 2011 medical records tells a different story, one that confirms her real 1Q21.1 microdeletion
And
syndrome.
let's talk about those Aaliyah texts. Gypsy told Aaliyah she knew about her real condition, yet today she denies it completely. That's not just a slip up. To me, that's a complete rewrite of reality.
And that's what we're seeing with My Time to Stand, a carefully constructed revision of the past. The question is, who benefits most from the rewrite? Gypsy, Christy, Melissa, Aaron? I mean, the list goes on.
They all do. They all benefit
They all benefit. And right, and those Aaliyah
from
texts, I
rewriting.
mean, those Aaliyah texts were very interesting in a couple of ways. One, it's very interesting that those were released now, because we've never seen that
Mm-hmm.
before. We've seen versions of transcripts of it back in the day in 2015, and then nobody ever saw those again. Like, we had been looking for them for a long time. And so them coming out now,
Mm-hmm.
and in this, I mean, she is, you can tell that the, going past just her, what she says about her chromosome disorder, you can tell when you're reading these conversations with her and Aaliyah, how contrived Gypsy is being. And she is clearly trying to either
Mm-hmm.
cover up something that she doesn't want Aaliyah to hear and take the wrong right way, you know what I mean? Or she
Mm-hmm.
is trying to elicit some sort of information from Aaliyah. Something is going on in this conversation. It's not just, "Hi, I haven't talked to you in 2
Mm-hmm.
years and I just want to catch up." No, it's not that. Um,
Right.
and this passage where she's telling Aaliyah about the chromosome disorder, I mean, she's laying it out, and it's really interesting because she's giving a very clear timeline. In 2011, this happened. In 2012, we did this. In 2013, we did that. And I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting because it just seemed like it was so out of character, out of place for her to be timelining that, you know?
Out of pocket.
But
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
admits that
Just weird.
not only does she have this, she knows she has it. She knows exactly what it is. She freaking names it, you know, and she freaking is telling them, She's like, well, it explains why I've had all these medical problems, and I'm glad that we know, and I'm a tough girl, and I will survive. So at this late juncture in 2014, she does have the awareness that her syndrome, it is true, yet she wants to deny it within the same breath, almost like it's just, here she is, she's admitting to it, and then later she just pretends like none of that ever happened. Like,
Right, right. I don't know. I sometimes feel like she
she
plays a
does.
different part for different people that
She
she's
does. She's a
talking.
chameleon.
You
She
know?
she is a person who will change
Yeah.
to the whatever it is that you're expecting to hear from her at that time, or
Or
or what
that
she
she
needs from
needs
you.
from you at
Exactly.
that
You're
time.
right.
Exactly.
Exactly what she needs from you at the time.
So yeah, I can't even try to understand why she has done and said half the things that she has done and said. I can't because
No. No, especially knowing that there's proof of these things.
exactly.
Like, that's what boggles my mind, is that there is clear evidence to refute these things that you are saying, and yet you continue to lie about things that we can 100% prove you're lying about. Like,
Right.
it's one thing to lie about the things that are subjective and that Dee Dee can't prove that she did or didn't do. It's a whole nother thing when you are, lying about your own medical history.
Which is why it's hard to believe anything else that, like, say you couldn't prove, like,
Right.
having to question what happened with her grandfather. I hate having to question that. I
Yeah.
would hate if that happened to her, and
Mhm.
I hate having to question it
Well, and she knows that.
because
That's the thing.
she
She
has
knows that. She
right,
knows that
right,
it goes against the grain for us to question a victim, especially with how much we work with victims and
right,
what we want to do with our company and our nonprofit and things like that. Like,
exactly.
so, and for anybody, you should not question a victim that way, but yet with her you have to,
Mhm,
because she can't keep a story the same. It's
mhm,
always changing, and she's been caught in so many fabrications that it's interesting to me that she just keeps going with them. Like, at
mhm.
some point, wouldn't you just be like, I've said everything I have to say and I'm done? No, because that ends her gravy train.
Right,
you
right.
know
Keeps going.
Gypsy's narrative is designed to paint her as the ultimate victim, a girl trapped in a web of lies and abuse. But is she really a victim? Or is she actively participating in the construction of this story?
When you look at her early life, she was the one constantly reinforcing her own sickness. The victim role was a part she played, but over time, it became her entire identity.
It did. She wasn't just a passive recipient of Dee Dee's manipulations. Gypsy helped create the narrative. She believed she was ill, which she was, but she
Mhm,
also began to tell herself that that story wasn't true.
mhm. And it's a slippery slope. At what point does someone stop being manipulated and start manipulating their own story?
And as we know, the line between victim and perpetrator can be blurred, especially when the mind is working overtime to justify its own actions. And like you said, this is a slippery slope. At one, no,
Right.
nobody's denying that Gypsy was manipulated. She
Mhm,
absolutely was manipulated. Her mother manipulated her. She got her to do this. Okay, and regardless of whether I believe there's any medical abuse or not, there was a level of fraud going on outside of the medical community. Everyone wants to think that this all ties into what happened in the community
right.
inside the hospitals. No, the hospitals and the medical records and all of that all proves absolutely it's not Munchausen by proxy, it's not medical child abuse. But the con exaggerating her symptoms and making her this sympathetic victim all the time to everybody was financially beneficial, and that's where the con is. And yes, did Dee Dee manipulate her into that? Yes. She even talks about it with the doll issue. Like, she admits that she knew that if she did what her mother told her to do, she'd get a reward, so she would do what her mother told her to do because she wanted the rewards. It's that reward system was used to create that type of narrative, that relationship between her and her mother. And eventually that backfires on Dee Dee later on, you know. Um, but the text messages between her and Aaliyah, the constant changing story, it is a slippery slope. And she learned from one of the best manipulators out there. And she comes from a long history of manipulators, and she still has manipulators all over her life. I have often wondered if she had gone into prison without the influence of Christy and had really worked on herself, if she would have, and what she would look like today if the push for getting her bag, as Melissa Moore put it to her, was so important. I just wonder if what that I wish we could have seen what that version of Gypsy would have looked like.
Would have been like, right.
Because yes, I do understand the motivations now. Like for years, for the last 8 years, I've had a very hard time reconciling even still why she did this and why she lies about it and all of that. Like I had a hard time with this. And there is moments where I feel compassion for
Right.
her. There's moments where I'm outraged. But when reading this book, it did give me a clearer picture of her mental state. And it's not just a situation where I think we're dealing with, somebody who has sociopathic tendencies, which she clearly
yeah.
has sociopathic tendencies.
No.
I'm not going to say she's a full-blown sociopath because I can't do that, but she has sociopathic tendencies. She has tendencies of the cluster B personality disorders, and when you're looking at that, I begin to see that maybe it's a coping mechanism more than anything else in this, is that she can't allow her brain to
Right.
accept the truth. Then she has to take responsibility for what she did to her mother, and she has to realize what she did was not justified. It was not in self-defense, and her mother was not making her sick. It was a con, but she was not making her sick, and that Gypsy knew her mother was not making her sick at one point in time. And now she has 100% convinced herself through delusional thought that her mother is the ultimate villain in this, and I don't think so.
And maybe that's how she is psychologically getting through it.
I think so.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep. I think so. I think she's using it as a coping mechanism.
Damn well, she
Yeah.
could have got out of there. That she did not have to do that to her.
Right. So the only way she can deal with this is to convince herself.
She may have felt very strong about it at the time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like I said, you can't be held responsible for what you're thinking, but what you do, absolutely. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
mean, I see a girl who I think the need to escape was so high because she really didn't know how to go on her own, against her mother. And I think that she truly convinced herself.
And I do feel like she was yearning for that attention from Rod.
Yes.
I really do.
I think daddy issues is a big part of this. Big part of this.
And if I'm not, because she sent the sketchy photos to him, right?
She makes a post about how he's ruined her life. This is all happening in 2011 when she finds out about her chromosome disorder. She gets a lot of shit happens in 2011, guys.
Yes. And so, I really think that, when it's not enough, she's going to jump and make more noise and do more things to, notice me, Dad. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
And if and even though she's old enough to be on her own, but like I said, I don't know exactly.
She's not cognitively or developmentally able to do that.
Would she have 100% got sent straight to Rod and Christy because she's older? You know what I mean? She's over 21. I don't know. Where would she have gone? What would she have done? Would Rod and Christy have taken her in and said, hey, she just passed away, come and stay with us? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Memory's a tricky thing. As we've seen with Gypsy, it can be shaped and manipulated by others, but it can also be restructured by the person themselves.
And that's where things get even more complicated. In a study by Loftus and Pickrell from 1995, they showed that memories can be planted in a person's mind, leading them to accept them as true. Gypsy's story has evolved over time, and what started as one narrative has molded into something else entirely.
Exactly. And as she was exposed to new media, interviews, and books, it only compounded her own beliefs about her past. It wasn't just the narrative that changed, it was her memory of the events.
Yeah, and when we think about when we look at this medical history, you know, it was originally what we missed was misconstrued by one statement. Gypsy has no long lasting effects. She's not got
Hmm.
any of the things that her mother said. She has no long lasting effects. That was
Right,
the lie we were originally told. And that lie shaped how we looked at these medical records when we had them. We were originally trying to figure out, well, why the frick frack are the doctors doing this shit, right? Because none of it
right,
made any sense in the scope of, well, if she doesn't have this, then why are these results coming back the way they're coming back? Like, why are these results coming back the way they're coming back? Because it just
right.
wasn't tracking. And I think about a conversation, we had often back in the day between me, Christina, and Colleen about these ER visits. And we could not we couldn't figure them out. We did not understand why on earth was she ending up in the hospital in the emergency room all the freaking time. And I'm not talking about the feeding tube. That is its own thing, okay? The feeding
Right,
tube visits, the feeding tube was not being monitored by any specific doctor, and it wasn't being changed out on a regular. And Dee Dee didn't like changing it out. I don't know if that was her, Gypsy, whatever. I don't know, but she took her in, and it was usually because it was infected because Gypsy doesn't take care of her personal
right, right,
hygiene.
right.
Okay, and we've seen that since. Even her
Yeah,
father had to tell her, clean up your room, do this, go do that.
yeah,
And so she does not have those cares for her own self. She doesn't practice self care because her mother did everything for her. So
right,
she didn't have to. But these ER visits had us perplexed. The ER visits that would happen either, there was some that happened because she was claiming she just had a seizure and she was scared, but
yeah.
the vast majority of them were upper respiratory problems.
Hmm.
And I'm going to tell you what, 9 times out of 10, they admitted her to the hospital and kept her for
Hmm.
several days, 3 to 4 days each
Hmm.
time, because there was something wrong. And I
Yeah,
think
they're
now,
not going to
go
you
ahead.
if there's not. They're not going to keep you there if there's nothing wrong.
Right. And so I think about these, and when I was doing the blogs for this episode, I really sat and thought about those damn ER visits, because when we first found this chromosome disorder this year and confirmed it,
Hmm.
Colleen said to me, this explains all the ER visits. And it kind of just flew past me. I didn't like
Hmm.
really think on it a whole lot.
Didn't sink
And I
in yet,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
And then I went on. But now looking through it yet again and thinking about, she wasn't just taking her there to have more procedures done. She's taking her there because she's actually legitimately having breathing issues.
Right,
And I do believe that she had childhood epilepsy. She may still have epilepsy. We don't know because we
right.
don't have access to her current medical conditions, and she's not
Mm-mm.
truthful about them. So these
Right,
ER visits that drove us insane, like, oh my God, these freaking ER visits, which tracks with Munchausen by proxy, because oftentimes the mothers use ERs as a way to get around their primary care doctors being, suspicious of things, because
I
the
feel like
doctors in the emergency room, they don't have access to your entire history. you
right,
know
right,
they have very limited access, and they're not going to go through 10 years of your history. Even if they have access to it, they're going to look at the problem at hand and solve the problem.
right.
And now I think, oh my God, that proves even further that Dee Dee was just a mom who was like, what the fuck is wrong with my
Wanting to know
kid?
what the hell is going on with her kid, right,
And here's
right.
Gypsy making her mom a villain for giving a shit about her.
And here's another thing. when you're on any kind of government assistance,
Yeah.
let me just tell you, they're not going to pay for something they don't think is real or
No.
that they don't have proof of. Best believe the red tape you have to go through
Mhm.
is insane.
Is insane,
So I feel like
especially
if
for
it was
several of the procedures she had.
right,
These aren't
right,
procedures that are just done because the doctor says it needs to be
no,
done. No, so a lot of these have to get
mm-mm,
I'm sorry, a lot of these have to get pre-authorization.
exactly,
They have to go through specialists. Like
yeah,
the Medicaid has to sign off on it. Just like people talking about her teeth, and saying, well, they could have saved the teeth. No, no, it is likely that they could not have. There's a lot of capping going on. There was a lot of crowns. There was
not
fillings.
just
There
that.
was
Here we
a
go
lot
again.
of dental
Here
shit.
we go.
But you
Medicaid again. They're going to tell them don't do a root canal, pull it. It's too expensive to do any kind of work, especially a root canal.
right. So and I want you guys to understand these extractions and having her teeth yanked out. Gypsy was in her 20s when this was going on. She was not
Hmm.
a child going to a doctor and her mother rubbing Orajel on her freaking teeth and
No,
them ripping them out. It's not like she ate a cupcake and they yanked her out of her head. No, there is extensive dental work done, and eventually, yes, they had to pull the teeth. That's what happened.
if you lay with a bottle in your mouth, and then if you're sucking on a bottle and you fall asleep with it in your mouth, you're definitely going to you'll get rot. It's called bottle rot.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see clearly all the way back to when she's a young girl, she has problems with her baby teeth as well as her
Mm.
adult teeth. It,
And some of it, I think, is the chromosomes.
yes.
But I think a lot of the protruding, the way it protruded like it did,
Yes.
was from
It's
that
from that
bottle
bottle. Yeah,
way
from the
too
bottle.
long.
I do.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree. It pushes out your teeth. It's almost like a tongue thrusting. She probably did tongue thrust a
right.
lot.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
thing, especially with the high palate and everything. I imagine that that's something she probably did.
Hmm.
So when you're looking at the teeth, I mean, first of all, she's got the high palate, which causes her to excessively drool, which then causes that to pool in her mouth, which causes rot. On top of that, it can cause, soft weakness in the teeth. There can be, she didn't have good hygiene. They didn't have fluoride back in that time period down in the bayou.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a million different reasons why these
And how
teeth
does
were bad.
failure to thrive actually affect a
Yes.
child? I don't even know as far
Especially if
as
she's
that goes.
vomiting. No, it can. If she's vomiting, it can rot
That
your
acid
teeth. That's why
rot.
a lot of
Yeah,
time people who have bulimia, that's why their teeth rot because they are forcing
yeah.
themselves to vomit and it eats the enamel.
Oh, that acid coming up, right?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm. It eats the enamel. So I mean, the medical history it has boggled us for so long when it was really honestly very simple. you know and I get so upset with how she has been able to manipulate the medical part of this, and without any consequences. Like, she doesn't think about the fact that you are talking about actual doctors who did actual things. And yes, while I do believe there are a couple of doctors in this that I think are very shady, probably
mm,
participated in the medical
mm,
fraud, allegedly, in my
mm.
opinion, for entertainment educational purposes only.
It's only
But I mean, you're talking about tons and tons and tons of doctors, and she's basically calling them all liars. And if that's the case, then they should have all had their licenses pulled. But
well. Now she's saying it's human error.
it's just human error, but it's
Yeah.
not. And when
So
you're looking at this, I mean, that was why we were so critically looking at the doctors. And I was serious. I was going to put together a presentation for the board to remove these doctors' licenses because of how
hmm,
upsetting it was to
yeah,
think that they participated in this willingly or
it is
unwillingly. It was just
right.
horrible. Now I look at it and I'm like, these doctors were doing their job. They were trying to help a mother figure out what is wrong with her kid. The end,
Exactly.
period.
'Cause there is nothing like not knowing.
No.
The not knowing is
I can't
just the worst.
imagine going 21 plus years of my child's life and still not knowing what the heck is wrong with my kid and why they're still
And
having
waiting on tests,
problems.
waiting, results on the test, and oh my
I mean,
goodness,
on and
it's
on and on and on. It's upsetting. And if you look at, yes, Dee Dee was looking for an answer, but she also was mostly treating the symptoms, which is what you do with a chromosome disorder, because you
hmm
don't know exactly what causes some of these things. And chromosome disorders are highly understood well, like it's still something in medical, technology and education and everything that's still very, they don't understand all of it.
and that's the thing, her having it, she could really, turn this around
Yeah.
and be about it,
Yep.
and she could be an advocate for it. I
Yep.
mean, my God, the girl that has the face for it has her face,
Yeah.
and she could teach people about it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, she could really,
Yeah.
honestly,
She could, but she'd rather
but you got to get out.
participate in the delusion. And I think,
Yeah.
I think the role of the media in Gypsy's narrative cannot be underestimated. They have
hmm
played a huge part in amplifying her story, and with every new retelling, they've helped shape the public's perception of her, from Erin Lee Carr to Melissa Moore. And
hmm
I believe that between Christy and the media telling Gypsy what her story is, instead of getting the story from her, has
Right.
created a lot of this problem.
Right. With the documentaries and the interviews, the media has had a significant impact on how people are viewing Gypsy.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, every time a new version of the story is told, new details are added or taken away.
It's
We just talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. The details switch up. It's like a game of telephone where the original story gets more
hmm
and more distorted. And as Gypsy's story
hmm
becomes more popular, it's harder to distinguish fact from fiction. And that's one of the things
hmm
we've been very upset about, the fact that the media is ignoring the facts on purpose. There's no other explanation for it at this point. There has been enough noise made from too many people to tell me that the media is not willfully participating in this false narrative anymore.
Absolutely.
They
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 are.
are. Whether they were in the beginning or not is to be questioned. I really do want to know more about what Erin and them did when they were working on Mommy Dead and Dearest, and how much she did have and how much she did know,
hmm
because I think it's quite a bit, to be honest with you. And
Right.
I'm really questioning why the media will just not acknowledge that, hey, yeah, we were sold, and we were sold a lie too, we believed it too. And that's all they need to do. They don't have to go back and be like, oh my god, yeah, we participated and we did it and we're so sorry. No, it would take nothing more than a, well, we were duped just like you folks and we're so sorry, but here's the truth. No, she doesn't have Munchausen. Her mom didn't have Munchausen by proxy. She's not a victim of it, and she's not a survivor of childhood medical child abuse. And here's the real truth: she does have a chromosome disorder. It does explain her problems, and we believe that, yes, she has a delusional thought process of her real conditions, and that is what led to the murder of her mother. And it would be very
Right.
simple, but they don't want to do that because it opens them up to scrutiny.
Of course.
They don't want to admit it. Just like it's hard to get a DA to admit that they've wrongfully convicted someone, you know?
Yeah, and they may want to look at who does their research for them,
Yes,
because obviously they bad at it.
they're bad at it,
They're
obviously.
real bad at it.
Like, you're not doing your jobs. Like, I
No,
mean,
no.
I don't understand. I really don't. Like,
Especially Dr. Philbill. I'm like,
not one mainstream media, not even one, is willing to say, hey, wait a minute,
nope, not one.
something's not right here.
hmm
We've got hard-hitting investigative reporters even that have spoken to her, and they handle her with kid gloves, and they don't ask the hard-hitting questions. Like,
hmm
somebody was just being interviewed recently, Blake Lively, and somebody, the reporter was hitting hard on her and asking her questions that she didn't necessarily want to answer. I have never, not one time, seen an interview with Gypsy Rose where they hold her to the mat for anything.
Because how dare
How
you?
dare you? How dare you?
How dare she was an abused child? How dare you?
How dare you? Exactly.
That's what they, and that's how we all felt. I think a lot of us and everybody listening probably felt in the very beginning, like, my God, this girl, I can't imagine what she went through, blah, 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 until we slowly started peeling it back. But even still, with the recent interviews, there's no excuse.
There isn't.
There's no, the truth is out there. You all know. You know what I
Yep.
mean? They don't make her elaborate on anything.
Nope.
Can you tell us more about this advocacy work
Right,
you're doing?
or ask them. Well, okay, wait a
There's
minute.
no
But the last
pushback.
time I watched your last interview, Gypsy. Like, it's like they do no research whatsoever on her. I watched your
No.
last interview at Gypsy, and what you said when you were talking about the feeding tube, or the handcuff situation. We'll go with the dog leash situation. With the dog leash
Mhm.
situation is not what you're saying today. So, can you please explain to us why there's two conflicting stories here? Because it seems like it's changing all the time. Why does no one ask this? Why does no one ask a follow-up motherfucking question to her?
They don't want to. They don't want to.
It's ridiculous.
Why doesn't anybody in public? And I'm not saying harass. That's not what I'm
No,
saying. Don't
no,
go up harass.
no.
That's not what I'm saying. But why doesn't somebody say, hey, I really do want to know why did all that really happen? Like, why did it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she said she will talk to anybody if they're nice to her.
I know. Like,
She said she answers her messages, so as long as people are being nice to her.
yeah.
And I'm not. I have no reason to be mean to her.
Right.
Like, I really, I
Yeah.
uh, but I really just want somebody that's going to be honest with me. You know what I mean? If I'm going to interview somebody,
Yeah.
I'm going to know that
But she's not.
that
She won't.
you're going to tell me what I already know about you. Like, don't barefaced lie to me.
I don't think she has the ability to be truthful, Mac. I'm not even sure she knows what the truth is. So I think that's why she continues to create different narratives, because she doesn't know which narrative is truthful. And her mind is playing these tricks on her, which a mind is a tricky thing. It fills in things where it doesn't need to, if it feels like you have to have it filled in. Your repressed memories can be manipulated and interfered with,
And you have people around you that are filling them in,
right?
that aren't necessarily giving you the right information.
Yeah, exactly.
So I understand that. I do. I get that.
Yeah.
Which is why, going to therapy, deep
Deep
diving
therapy, but she
therapy.
has to be honest with the therapist, and I don't think she's ready to
Exactly.
do that, if ever.
And when she's ready to do that, I'll tell you what, her world will change. The way she feels,
Mm-hmm.
it'll change.
It will.
I mean,
It will.
I hope it does. Okay. And so what's next for Gypsy? As we have seen, her narrative is constantly shifting, but as more evidence comes to light, can she continue to sell the stories she has created?
The truth is, as much as Gypsy's story has changed, so has public perception. More people are questioning the narrative, and as we continue to dissect her story, we will uncover more inconsistencies.
So what do you think? Will Gypsy be able to maintain control over her narrative, or will the truth eventually break through? Only time will tell.
I think the truth will eventually break through. I do. I feel like there's enough people shouting it now that it's very
Mm-hmm.
hard for her to ignore it. I think it's why Lifetime is pulling back from her. And I think it's why they did create this narrative of this bullying for this freaking season, cyberbullying of her, because I think they began to realize that they couldn't continue on with this false narrative, because too many
Well,
people were bringing them to the mat.
it's at least provable.
Yeah.
it's at least something that's provable. I mean, her and her little, yeah, are doing it too. But I'm
It's tit
saying,
for tat. She gives as good
it
as she
is.
gets, but I mean,
Yeah.
is she being cyberbullied by certain content creators? For sure. For sure. The
Yeah.
ones who sit and talk
Hmm.
about her looks, her whatever, all of those different things on a daily basis, and that's what they constantly harp home on and
Or the making fun of her
making
baby,
fun of her
man. Like, what's
baby.
wrong with
Dude,
you?
that
It's a
that
baby.
should be
Like,
so
come
off
on now.
limits. It should be so off limits. She was a
And
baby.
and that's the thing, pissing me off because you're making me agree with freaking Gypsy right
Right.
now.
Like,
But seriously, lay
seriously?
off her kid. Like, what is wrong with you?
Right. It's a baby. Aurora, just like Gypsy, was innocent at one time,
Exactly.
and she didn't ask. Gypsy, just like Gypsy, did not ask to be brought into this
To
world
be no,
and be a con
no, no.
artist. Aurora,
But she's here and hopefully she's healthy and it seems like Gypsy's really happy about having her and I really hope everything does go well, but I don't think people should be putting possum faces on this little baby
no.
or
I just feel like I don't understand why.
it's a baby. It's a
Yeah, it's a
baby.
baby.
When
I
the
don't
fuck are you
understand
gonna
why we
grow up?
even need
Like
to.
it's a baby.
I don't.
Oh
I
my
don't
god.
understand why we don't need why we need to even talk about the baby. I don't
I don't
understand.
either.
Other than, is the baby being well cared for? Is the baby safe?
Right.
And is she
Right.
lying about the baby's medical conditions because she doesn't want to admit it? Those are all things that need to be heavily monitored with her, and I don't think that her family will do so. Neither side, not her
No,
family,
but
not her
I
family,
think
not
the doc
Kim's family. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. But in all honesty, no one should be discussing this baby.
mm-mm,
It's a
mm-mm.
baby. It's innocent.
Innocent.
It doesn't know what life it's
Born
been born into. It didn't
no, born innocent.
ask to be born
And
into this
could
family.
possibly, go back when it gets older and see these things that people have portrayed, you know,
Yeah.
making it a demon baby, making it a,
Possum making, like,
whatever.
can you
Dude, come
imagine,
on
like,
now.
what a
Come
child
on now.
going through that, like, growing up with all of this shit just heaped on her because of what her mother did?
Yeah.
It,
It's going to be hard
it's
enough
already hard enough. Yeah.
because people are mean and their kids are going to be
Mean. I
mean.
already told Gypsy she had to prepare her child for the mean kids on the playground. And she already was like,
Girl,
no, I'm not going to tell her these things. Well, obviously you have to, girlfriend, or your kid's going to end up with some asshole, kid on the
I would
playground run up and say, well, my mommy says that your mommy murdered her grandma and you can't come to my birthday party.
exactly. And that is not going to be cool, dude. That is just really,
No. I'm
yeah,
like, don't let that be
yeah.
the way your child finds out about all of
Like,
this. Like,
she had to tell her before someone else
right,
does.
right, exactly.
You're going to want Aurora to hear that from you before she hears
But
that from
not in a
anybody
freaking book
else.
where you describe your boobs being freaking plastered with freaking
No!
barbecue sauce, Gypsy. Not that way.
No!
That's not the coming of age freaking
No.
tale you want to give her, okay?
No. That's like a discussion that either her and her family need to have with her or even her one-on-one with her.
She
However
doesn't
she
need to
feels
know about her
comfortable.
mother's sexual activities leading up to
No,
a
but I'm
murder in the
talking
first place.
about knowing about Dee Dee
Right.
is what I'm saying. Yeah. Knowing about that.
Right? And then think
Because
about
kids
this,
are gonna
that
say
that
stuff.
that child also has to grow up listening to all the bullshit about her grandmother constantly.
Yeah.
This was not a good situation. I
No.
really,
Could you
really wish she had
imagine how
taken
Dee
time.
Dee can you imagine how Dee Dee would be with this
Oh my
baby?
god, she'd be over the moon.
I mean, I just can't mm,
Oh, it's heartbreaking. And you know
mm-mm.
what? That's why the Mother's Day post from last year really pissed me off when she said, "Well, it's not lost on me that my own mother isn't here to celebrate." And then she goes on the Vile Files for the second time, and she double downs on it there too. She's like, "Yeah, I understand that my mom isn't here, and that's sad that she can't have these moments with my child." Well, wait a minute. First of all, you're the reason why your mom's not here and can't have those that relationship. But on top top of that, if your mom is who you say your mom is, how on earth would you even want your mother around your child?
I just think that now that she has a child of her own and she's going to see what that mother child bond is
Mm.
and what it means to have that love
If
for
she's
somebody, you'll do
capable, and I'm not quite
more.
sure she is, of those emotions.
I hope she is, and I hope that she's going to feel those things because she will see what it means to love somebody so much that you'll do anything for them.
Well, so far though, all she's expressed about motherhood really has been negativity. And I think she was more obsessed with getting pregnant and being the center of attention in that than she was about being an actual mom to a
Hmm.
child. That's not her fantasy. Her fantasy was the guy and the
No,
picket fence and the whatever. And I don't know. I hope there are changes made, but I am not, I'm hoping for the best, but expecting the worst, preparing for the
I
worst.
really hope she is happy being a mom because, like, I've seen a couple of her lives,
Mhm,
like the one
mhm.
where she was calling the dog
Yeah, that
Aurora,
one
but
was
whatever.
funny.
But she was talking about, you know, Aurora Reina and just about how cute and whatever. Like she seems happy. She seems to
Yeah,
be happy to have whatever. It seems that way. I really hope it is that
right.
way, and and I really hope that she understands the love that her
Had
mom
for her.
truly had for
I
her.
hope, but again, I
Right.
just I
And stop villainizing her. Please
just
just stop
stop.
it
Just
because
stop. If you don't want to, if you don't,
I
you know
know
what? If
damn well she
my
loves
mother
you.
taught me, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. Like maybe you need to take a stance of I've said everything I want to say about my mother, and the relationship I've had with her. I am not about being in the past. I really want to move forward
To move
my
forward.
life, and I hope she can do that. But let's be fair. I mean, it's all an illusion and a distraction with Gypsy and her crew. And so she can
Hmm.
set on a live and give that happy moment all you want, but do we know once that camera cuts off what the Gypsy really looks like
You
behind
know,
scenes? No.
yeah, right. You see that with a lot of
Yep.
people. It's like they look happy. I mean, look at how Gabby and Brian
Yep.
looked,
Yep.
right? They looked happy.
We
All
call it the
it
highlight
was like,
reel.
man, I do that. I want to do a band trip across.
Yeah.
Seriously, she made it look a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You would not have
No.
known that's what was happening behind
It's
the
called the
scenes.
highlight reel. It's
Wow.
called the highlight reel. And you should never compare
Hmm.
your highlight reel to someone else's highlight reel because you have no idea at what stage in their life they really are in. It's a highlight reel,
Right.
you know?
I was gonna say, who wants to show the bad stuff though? You
Nobody.
know what I mean? Like, yeah. So
The messy is the messy, and social
right.
media has created this highlight life reality, but it's not reality. That's the problem. It's not real. It's an
It's
illusion.
what we want people to
Yep.
see.
Yep.
Exactly.
So that's a wrap for today's episode. We've unraveled more of the contradictions in Gypsy's past and explored how her story has evolved over time.
And as we move forward, we'll continue to break down the lies and the truth, all while diving deeper into the complexities of Gypsy Rose Blanchard's life.
Thanks for joining us on Gathering of the Crows. Make sure to tune in next week as we break down chapter 3 and 4 of My Time to Stand. We're going to look at the inconsistencies and contradictions that continue to emerge as we unpack this complex story.
And don't forget to join us on Patreon for exclusive content, behind the scenes analysis, and early access to new episodes. You won't want to miss it.
Until next time, keep calling out the truth and have a good one from the Good Wives, serving up true crime,
One
one
dish
dish
at
at a
a time.
time. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.